On the outside of the Capitol building on the west side, there is a statue of a boy, a man. And that man was a Civilian Conservation Corps boy, CCC. Many and many, many thousands of those boys all over the country. And we paid for one of those statues, our organization. And there were 9 CCC boys still alive in New Mexico. They were mostly in Albuquerque, and I'd go down and meet with them. They met once a month. And they came, 2 or 3 of them. There was only a few of them left. And I'll never forget, as we had a cover on it, and as we pulled the cover off, all of those boys started crying. It's a full-size body of what they had on in their work clothes all the time. I mean, not one panel, there's a huge number of panels featuring polo ponies, and it's in the basement as you go from the basement of the state capitol building under the ground to the building adjacent to it, those were on long-term loan to the New Mexico Military Department, and I found them in a room in the military building out on the highway across from the place you run horses. I couldn't think of the New Deal. The Museum of Folk Art is a painting by Odin Hollenkart, and another one has been stolen that was done by Fremont Ellis. The Museum of Art has 186 pieces of art plus 6 fresco panels that were done by Will Schuster. And then there was a lot of FSA photos in northern New Mexico that they have copies of. The Human Services Building has 2 paintings, but there's one's missing. Now, any other programs, but the Social Security, of course, is still with us. REA, Rural Electric Association, is still with us. I'm sure the farmers all appreciate that. FDIC, anybody know what has to do with that?
Federal insurance, yeah.
Has to do with banking.
Yeah.
Yes, FDIC.
Guaranteed
Federal
bank
Deposit
accounts.
Investments Corporation, I think is what it is. And then there was FCC.
Communications, radio.
Right. So these were some of the best known ones and the ones that are still hanging around with us today. And I think we're kind of appreciative of those, particularly the FDIC if you got a bank account.
How about Frances Perkins?
Well, that's, I'm thinking.
She's a hero.
Yeah. Then in the parks in New Mexico that were done, White Sands, Carlsbad, Coronado, Bandelier, and a lot of city parks. Schools here in Santa Fe that were created, maybe you went to some of them, or your kids. Acequia Madre, Alvord, Carlos Gilbert, Gonzalez, Connie, and Larry Goite. And they're still with us.
and Augur Freya was also.
The Lee Harvey Junior High School is now our new county courthouse. Now, we had a courthouse downtown, but then they moved it. What they did was tear Harvey Junior High down and build a new courthouse. And that's diagonally across the street from the post office. In the county, some of the things that were the schools, Cerrillos, that is now a gallery. Chimayo, the school was and is now an interfaith community center. Condillo is now a fire station and community center. Edgewood, likewise. El Rancho Senior Center. Galisteo, a private home. Golden, a private home. Madrid, community centers and a private home. Nabe and Pewaukee Community Center. Asenke Madre and Tusuki still have a center, but that was originally schools or whatever they chose to put them into. Here in Santa Fe, the National Guard building is now a military museum. Hyde Park State Quarters now got a restaurant attached to it. Farmer State Police Headquarters at Alta Vista and Cerrillos, which is the highway department building that we have to go to sometimes. The Santa Fe Boys Club was built back then. The Viagra building on South Capitol and Galisteo was built by WPA and CCC. And it includes now mainly welfare offices. Don Gasper Bridges and the First District Courthouse. I mean, Santa Fe got a lot. Other bridges, roads, sidewalks, sewers, acequias, and the early airport runways. Of course, that's kind of changed now. The National Cemetery, they did landscaping and other improvements. And my husband is buried there, and when I go up, I'll say howdy to him, and then I'll say, thank you guys for building this for us. And then, of course, as a reminder, they built so many privies, those fly-proof interior sanitation units. Then buildings, public buildings in Santa Fe that have public art in them. So these are places you could go look for public art. The main library downtown was originally built to be the city hall and the fire station. And if you look at it, there's a big garage door over here on this side. Well, they had those fire trucks in there, but then they put art in there with those fire trucks. And they also put them inside the building too. And Taos did the same thing. They had fire trucks and art all around the walls. Because certainly Taos was involved, as were so many of New Mexico towns. I grew up in Portales, and the county courthouse in the center of town was the thing that I remember. But there was one school also that I think was built during that time. Fry and Helico Library was the original was built and paid for by the Santa Fe Women's Board. But we helped, and then they hired Olive Rush, a woman here in town, an artist, and she painted a mural that's in the entryway of that building, and it's called The Library Reaches the People. And our organization, about 3 or 4 years ago, paid to have that mural totally restored. Because all of this is a long time ago, and some of doing guidebooks about each state. So there were 48 guidebooks created, and they're still available in libraries if you're lucky to find one. They got paid $25 a week. And the New Mexico guidebook has 458 pages, and it was done in 1940. And I have seen some in some libraries. We have them here at the library downtown. 13,000 artists did paintings in 1,100 towns, like post offices and federal courthouses. So that put a lot of them to work. Then others painted decorations on buildings, public buildings, like another 85 murals were done around the state, and then 2,500 buildings. And the other thing about the Work Project Administration, WPA, was also named the federal one. So to me, it was one big, huge program that really took care of a lot of things. Then they built federal art centers in various places. And in New Mexico, it was Roswell, Gallup, Melrose, and I think I may have left out that the family had to be destitute. If your family was destitute, you could get in, otherwise you couldn't. Including also that you had to have those 3 fast cane teeth. The CCC boys planted 3 billion trees all over this nation. They built 46,854 bridges. They created 1,000 national, state, and county, and city parks. So I'm sure you played in whatever in some parks in your life. They had, this is an interesting one, 3,470 forest lookout towers.
Yeah.
They fought fires for 60 million man-hours. Thank you. They created 5,000 miles of water supply lines. They created 89,000 telephone lines. They created 8,065 wells and pump houses. They put in 240,000 man-days in emergency flood areas. And then there was one thing that they created that I don't have on this list for some stupid reason.
The fly-proof sanitation unit.
They have created thousands of fly-proof interior sanitation units. Now, I know them with a different name, like an outhouse.
That's not fly-proof.
So thousands of fly-proof interior sanitation units. Oh my. At the time, Clyde Tingley was our governor, and his wife was named Carrie. And polio was getting pretty bad in our country about that time. So one of the persons who got hit with it was our president, Franklin Roosevelt. And so he was taken care of for his polio problems in Arkansas and what other? And here in New Mexico, we had a lot of polio problems too. And so particularly with the children. So they decided they better do something that would find a treatment place for all these people with polio, particularly children. And so, since Roosevelt had been already treated, somehow or other, Carrie Tingley, who was the governor's wife, got hold of Eleanor, the president's wife, and said, tell me what we can do to take care of all these kids and people that have got polio. And she said, well, I know that Franklin has gone to various places to get his treatment. And so she told her about some of them. And then she talked to her husband, and she talked to a few other people in the health department then. And they decided to listen to what Mrs. Tingley learned from Mrs. Roosevelt, and they decided to build a polio hospital for children in Hot Springs, New Mexico, which is no longer that name of the town. That town is now Truth or Consequences, New Mexico.
Kathy was part of the treatment, the hot springs?
Yes, that's why, because some of you don't know that Truth or Consequences was first named Hot Springs. And then if you have some recall, there was a TV and radio program that was Truth or Consequences, And they said to any town that would take our money and build public parks, we'll give X number of dollars. Hot Springs jumped up. We'll take your money. And if you go down there, you'll see that there are some Truth or Consequences parks, and it is known now today mainly as T or C. But that's because the two wives got together and made sure that that particular thing happened. So that's very interesting too.